So, what we value, the new system. Is combined with a new competency-based framework. The whole idea behind supervision and leadership the performance feedback, and there's a key word right there, ladies and gentlemen, feedback. We'll talk about and those fall under 4 major performance areas. And those 4 major performance areas are what's on the and mentor airmen to the next level. Because everyone up to your position. So why not mentor that person to take your place for the benefit of the Air Force? Makes sense, right? Makes sense. Okay? That's what the other services do. They mentor and they guide their soldiers, they guide their Marines for the next level of supervision. Okay? So that's what we're doing. 4 major performance areas. So we are looking to create mission-focused airmen. Mission-focused airmen that actually have and know Now, let me go back here for a moment. All right, notice it says designed for all ranks and AFSCs. So, in the old days, excuse me, I've got a few officers in here. In the old days, you could take an EPR and an OPR and read them side by side, and that OPR was written differently than that EPR because it was an officer versus enlisted. Now, is that the way it was supposed to be? No, but that's the way it ended. All right, so the idea behind the performance writing is everybody is written the same way. Officers are enlisted. Their report system is exactly the same across the board. So I should be able to take his EPB, read it, and understand what he did. I should be able to take the lieutenant's OPB, read it, and understand what she did. No difference between the two. Doesn't matter on the rank, doesn't matter officer or enlisted, doesn't matter what the AFSC is. That's the great thing about this. Because guess what? In the past, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the past for a moment. With the bullet writing. All right. Did anyone attend my bullet writing when I was here the last time? No? Oh, yes? Yes? All right. So with the bullet writing, I taught you, hey, you got this much space, you got to try to get it in there, right? You got to try to get it in there, so you're going to use acronyms and abbreviations and all that stuff to make it fit, didn't I? That's what I said. And you know, even when I said that, it was tearing me up inside because I just didn't like it. And the Air Force finally, I think I got to them. That's what it was. Okay, no. But the Air Force finally said, hey, you know what? That's not working. Because the problem is, number one, we were using so many acronyms and abbreviations and things of that nature, no one understood what you were trying to write anymore. No one understood it. Okay? Number two, it was very specific to career fields. Okay? By trade, I am retired active duty. By trade, I was combat weather. Weather people have their own language. By far have their own language. Okay? So anytime that we wrote a report or wrote a 1206 for a quarterly award or something, people would look at it all the time going, okay. All right? And the reason why behind that is because we used our language and no one else understood our language. And there's many different career fields out in the Air Force that are the same way. So the bullet system, and I think this is my next slide here. Yeah. The bullet system became very convoluted, very difficult to ascertain anything from because of the fact we were using so many acronyms and abbreviations, and we were worried about that white space at the end of the line and things of that nature. All right, so to give you an idea behind this, there's a document out there. It's a manual. Okay, it's called the DoD Abbreviations and Acronym Manual. Okay, it's an actual document. It's called DoD 2-1. 545 pages of acronyms and abbreviations used across the DoD. Can you believe that? 545 pages of acronyms and abbreviations. And guess what? No one knew what anyone else was writing. Therein lies the problem. Therein lies the problem. Okay. So, we want to create a more accurate, holistic performance system and to describe what an airman is doing and how well they're doing it, what their impact is. All right. So this is basically the foundational changes and how it affects the airman. So, four parts of the foundational changes. Number one, competency-based assessments. Evaluating behaviors, okay, and outcomes to provide that accurate, holistic assessment of what the airman actually is doing using the 10 airman leadership qualities. And we're going to do that by writing performance statements. And we're not only talking about EPBs and OPBs. We're talking about 1206s. No personnelist? Okay. I had some earlier. Okay. So has anyone ever written a declaration? All right. So if you've written a declaration, Chief, you know as well as I do. So it starts off with a standard line. You have a couple of narratives, then it ends with a standard line. Isn't that what a declaration is? So why not write everything the same way? And we were doing this crazy thing where we were writing one way for 1206s and one way for declarations and one way for EPRs and OPRs. It just made no sense. So the Air Force, thank God for Chief Wright, Chief Bass, and General Brown. Those three are the mainstay behind why we switched to the way we did. Okay, those three people. I started saying those three people. All right. So creating synergy across the Air Force, creating synergy for all airmen across the Air Force. So we're looking to develop mission-focused airmen that have certain behaviors and certain attributes to them to make them effective and efficient leaders and supervisors across the Air Force. Okay? Independent of the rank or the responsibility or AFSC. Everybody the same. All right. So how does it impact airmen? Clearly defines Air Force values. Okay. Clear and equitable understanding of performance. So the way that it's set up now, ladies and gentlemen, you should understand as someone that's being supervised exactly what your performance factor is, what your proficiency level is, because your supervisor is going to tell you what it is. Now, how many people supervise people? Okay, a few of you do. All right, if you supervise someone, guess what? No one ever said that supervision or leadership is easy, right? Right? Okay, so therefore you're going to have to do some work. You're going to have to do some work to make this work, and I'll tell you what you're going to have to do. I'll even take you down the road. I'll lead you down the path of what you have to do. All right, so we want to develop behavioral skills and growth in airmen. That's what we're looking to do, okay, and create that agile evaluation system for the future. So we're not only changing the way we're writing, we're changing the way we supervise and lead people, all right? And the writing is just basically recording of that. So we want to create an action order airman. Like I said, with the invent of AFRIGEN and things of that nature, and the threats that are out there now, we have to create a multi-focused, multi-purpose, mission-oriented airman that can think on their feet, make decisions, and adjust to the situation. Okay? Because very honestly, ladies and gentlemen, when the boots hit the ground and you're on the battlefield and something happens, that next person in line has to step up and make sure the mission is complete. All right, to be very honest. Because we are in the profession of arms, correct? And that's what we do. That's what we do. Okay. So, General Brown, this is interesting here. General Brown said, we must have evaluation systems that provide constructive feedback. Oh my God, really? Constructive feedback? Yes, constructive feedback. Not just, hey, here's your ACA, you're doing great, sign off on it and we're good to go. No, that day is over. That day is over. And you people in this room are the ones that's going to cause that to stop. All right? We're going to do this the right way, right? We're going to give feedback. We're going to tell them how they're doing. We're going to tell them how to grow to the next level. And we're going to record all of that using the narrative statement. Okay. All right. So we must have evaluation systems that provide constructive feedback, evaluate against qualities we value, and highlight future potential. So the 3 key points right there, the 3 key points, General Brown said them when he was the Chief of Staff for the Air Force. All right. So the whole person concept. So the whole idea behind this is the whole person concept. So we're looking to grade someone basically based on their rank, okay, their specialty, their level of responsibility, and their assigned duties. So it's interesting. Now I have some security forces guys in here because I've been using it all day, and finally I got you guys in here. All right, so let's take, for example, security forces. So I have an Airman First Class Security Forces apprentice, okay? He's an Airman First Class, all right? He's an apprentice. He has a certain level of responsibility. He has a certain assigned duties, correct? All right, so now let's take a technical sergeant, for example. Security Forces Tech Sergeant. Higher rank, different responsibilities, different assigned duties, okay? And it makes sense. That's the way it should be, right? Because you have an Airman First Class apprentice and you have a journeyman, okay, who's a technical sergeant. The problem was in the past is we were taking those two and comparing them to each other. And that was the problem. Because that Airman First Class cannot hold up to that technical sergeant because of those factors, all right? So the problem was, and I'm going to ask you to admit it, how many times did you take, okay, a bullet, you knew what I was going to say. You took a bullet and you went, that's pretty similar. Yeah, I'll just put it over here on this next one. How many people did that? Admit it. Okay, I did it. I admit I did it, okay? But we weren't doing anybody a service by doing that. All right, so next question. How many people had a repository of bullets that you used? Yeah, I did too. All right, so here's the thing with this. We were doing no one a service by doing that. We were doing no one a service. And I realized that finally when I started looking at the EPRs I was writing, and they all look the same. And that's the problem. They all look the same. So the whole idea behind this is we want to rate the airmen with the ALQs, not the ALQs by the airmen. Does everybody understand what I'm saying when I say that? So we don't wrap the airmen around the ALQ. We wrap the ALQ around the airmen. So in other words, every airman based on those factors should be rated differently. Right? And that's where we're going with this. All right. So here's the 4 major performance areas. Executing the mission, leading people, managing resources, improving the unit. These 4 areas is what you will grade when you do the EPB OPB. Now, underneath there are the 10 airman leadership qualities, and they are departmentalized into what they most pertain to. All right, so it starts off under executing the mission. Job proficiency. Well, that's always what we did, right? We told, hey, how well they did their job. But take a look after that, ladies and gentlemen. Initiative. So, wow, we want people to have initiative? Yeah, we want people to have initiative. Okay, adaptability. Can they adapt to situations? How are they in part as a team? In inclusion. What is their emotional intelligence factor? How do they communicate with other people? Under managing resources, are they responsible and held accountable for the stewardship of the equipment that they use and the planes that they work on and the guns that they use every day? And finally, improving the unit. How do they make decisions? And how do they show innovation? Okay? These are the 10 things that we are actually going to use to accurately describe our airmen. This is cool. This is probably the coolest thing that I've seen since I've been associated with the Air Force. And by the way, I'll just tell you how long I've been associated with the Air Force. Let's see. In November this year will be 40 years. 40 years. I came in when I was 18, well 17, 18. But yeah, I've been associated with the Air Force one way or another for over 40 years. So I've seen a lot happen. Seen a lot happen and a lot of things happen. And this is probably one of the coolest things that they could have ever done. It really is. All right, so synergy, simple and consistent. We are going to evaluate these people through the responsibilities based on the MPAs, what it comes down to. We are going to use that to make effective talent management decisions within the force structure. So such things as stratification, future roles, things of that nature will be determined using these. Okay. So the standards. The evaluation gives a clear and equitable understanding of the standard that that person is being held to based on the ALQs. Again, we do not wrap the ALQ or the airmen around the ALQs, we wrap the ALQs around the airmen. Okay? We are going to assess the behavior in alignment with those values, and we are going to capture that performance. And Chief Bass said it really well here. The synergy between the officer and enlisted evaluation systems is a huge win for how we develop our airmen to build the Air Force our nation needs. So again, everybody's rated on an even keel now. All right? So the way that we write for officers is exactly the same way we write for the enlisted folks. So I should be able to take up one or the other, read it, and understand what it's saying. All right. So before we get into writing, proficiency level. I used the word proficiency level earlier. How do we determine proficiency of an airman? Well, guess what? The Air Force is going to help you with that. They have come up with 5 proficiency levels. And these proficiency levels are from needs improvement to exceptionally skilled. Okay? So, within there, so how do I determine an airman is proficient or exceptionally skilled? Okay? What defines each one of these? Well, guess what? The Air Force took care of that too. All right? So, here are the basic ideas behind the 5 proficiency levels. So I'm not going to read every one of them, but I want you to notice something. Notice as you get further and further toward exceptionally skilled, notice that it gets deeper and deeper and more in depth and more, what's the word I'm looking for, more cognizant of what they should be doing. Okay, so notice needs improvement. Needs further growth to enhance understanding and or performance. So the airman has a problem and they need some help to alleviate the problem. Okay. Go down to exceptionally skilled. See how well it ties into the ALQs. Leverages changes. Oh my goodness, there we go right away. Leverages changes as an opportunity to better mission objectives. Inspires others. Well, there we go. Okay, to be more adaptable, right there, that's right on the ALQs, and equips them to handle changes independently. So there's that decision making. So as you get further and further towards exceptionally skilled, more and more is expected of you as an airman to get to that level of proficiency. So you will determine what the proficiency level is of all of the 10 ALQs based on these proficiency levels. Okay? Now, so how do we approach feedback? So you determine the proficiency of an airman with the 10 ALQs. How do you approach feedback? Ladies and gentlemen, feedback is probably one of the hardest things for a supervisor to do. And the reason why is we have this stigma that if we say something negative or we say that someone has to improve on something, that we may hurt their feelings or it may be a negative connotation. The problem is if you do not tell them what they're doing incorrectly or how to improve, how do they improve in the first place? How do you improve as a lieutenant if you're never told what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong? Makes sense, doesn't it? So we have to get past that stigma of I'm afraid to hurt someone's feelings or I'm afraid that I may hurt their career by telling them they're doing something wrong. The thing is, you're doing exactly the opposite. By telling them what they need to improve on, you're helping them to improve, which is going to help them in their career. And you have to think of it that way. And if you're not thinking of it that way, there needs to be a change. It really does. Okay? So, if you're talking to a high performer, and this is someone that is highly skilled or exceptionally skilled, okay? You want to talk about how they can be a future leader, what they're doing right, and not only what they're doing right, but why you think they're doing right and how they're affecting the mission. Because guess what? Everybody wants to know in the Air Force, how does my piece of the pie affect the mission? How am I affecting the Air Force as a whole and what we do every day? Okay? So discuss the desired development. No, notice it doesn't say, okay, you tell your supervisee what to do. It says discuss. So that means it's a conglomeration between the two, right? So you have a discussion with the person you supervise on how to improve to the next level. All right? The behaviors they possess and how do they continue to succeed in the Air Force. All right. So a good performer, focus on the contributions, of course. You want to tell them what they're doing right and how it affects the mission. But also, if there's areas of improvement, you need to discuss that with them. You need to be upfront and honest. These are areas you need to work on. Here are the reasons why. Okay? Today's airmen want to know the reason why. It's not just do this, okay? Me and you've been around the block for a while, so I remember the old days I was just told, airmen do this, and we did it. Okay? Today's airmen is much different. They want to know the reasons why behind what they do. And that's fine. That's fine. Okay? But we need to make sure as supervisors we follow up on that and we actually do it. We tell them the reasons why, okay, it's important. All right. So, areas of improvement and the potential for future growth. So in other words, how they can grow to the next level. How they can be that person on the left or the right that when chief steps away and goes into the sunset, they step up to the next level, okay? Identify any expected challenges. If there are challenges in their way, let's talk about the challenges that there may be and how to alleviate those challenges to make sure they get to the next level, okay? All right, so below average performers, got to be honest. Got to be honest with them. Here are my concerns. Your performance is such and such. Here are my concerns, and here how your negative performance is affecting the mission. Because I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, that every person in the Air Force, okay, or most, okay, I won't say every. You should never say never and always, okay. But most people in the Air Force are going. If you tell them that they're affecting the mission negatively, they're going to adjust to it. They're going to adjust to it because they don't want that. And very honestly, ladies and gentlemen, if they do not adjust to it, that means they don't care. And if they don't care, guess what? They need to be elsewhere. Agreed? Because guess what? When the rubber meets the road, you want to make sure you got people that's going to do what they need to do. Okay. So, articulate why they need to improve, how they're affecting the mission, why they need to improve, not only for the Air Force, but for themselves. These are the reasons why you need to improve, all right? And then work with them to create actionable steps for that improvement, all right? So I guarantee if you tell them they're affecting the mission in a negative way or they're not affecting the mission at all, they're going to adjust. They really will. 99% of the people are going to adjust. And if they don't adjust, there's a problem. And the problem is just more beyond attitude. Okay. All right, so blah, 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 told you all that stuff. Now it's time to write it. So we're actually going to talk about writing now. Hey, we're just 30 minutes in class and we're finally getting to the writing part. That's okay. All right, so we're going to talk about writing. So, shifting the culture, right? Shifting the culture. So, if you took my bullet writing class or you wrote bullets before, guess what? One of the things I told people all the time is numbers matter, did I not? Numbers matter. Get the numbers in there because the numbers matter. You know why I said that? And even when I said it, it was driving me insane inside because I knew the real reason why. Because we used so many acronyms and abbreviations that the numbers is the only thing that stood out. It is. So people would center on the number. And that's why I taught it that way, is because that was the only thing that stood out in the bullet. But guess what? Now we're going to worry about quality of work versus quantity. Because guess what? They can generate 100 sorties, but if 60% of them do not make TOT, that's only 40% accuracy. So the quality is low, but the quantity was high. So we're going to work on the quality of what they did, not just the quantity. I'm not saying you can't use numbers. I'm just saying do not use them as the be-all, see-all. They are there to qualify the statement, not to quantify the statement. Okay. All right, so the narrative statement itself. Standalone statement. So every time that you write on a task that they did, it's a standalone statement. It must be readable. That means it has to be in plain language English. Must be readable. Must be readable. All right? So let's go back to the acronyms and abbreviations. As I said earlier, 545 pages, right? That's a lot of acronyms and abbreviations. But if you go to the AFPC website under Career Management, there is a document there that's called acronyms. You can actually see what acronyms are now allowed in the new narrative writing format. Guess what? It's about a page and a half. It's about a page and a half. So such things as rank and unit designation, things of that nature can still be used. Acronyms can still be used. But beyond that, very little can be used. So they want you to write in plain language English. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
For the readable part, like, readable to whom? For example, like, security forces might talk about specifics in their statement that I won't know or understand in ops and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So should I be able to read and understand what they are writing, or is it more so like in your, I don't want to say your career field, but like.
But in your genre. Okay, no. I should be able to take, if the senior here writes a statement, I should be able to take that statement, give it to you, and you should be able to ascertain the who, what, when, why, and how. Yes. So it should be readable by everybody. And the problem with that is, in the past, is it wasn't. So if, he used acronyms and abbreviations and handed it to you, you had no idea, so you're like, okay, whatever. Yeah, and it went to the wayside. Yeah, but every time you write, you have to write to the level at which anyone can read it and understand it. Now, there are going to be things that are going to be specific to a career field. I understand that. But there are ways to write it in such a way that it can be understandable. All right, so how do you write the statement? This is what it all comes down to, right? This is why you came here, to find out why the statement, or how to write the statement. Two parts. First of all, the action. What did the airman actually do? Specific detail of what the airmen actually did. They did this. The second part is the impact to the mission. How did they impact the mission, and to what level did they impact the mission? Okay? Was it at squadron level? Was it at the wing level? Was it at Guard Bureau level? Was it at Air Force level? Because guess what? When we designate the level of impact, we also designate how well they help the Air Force. So that speaks volumes. So here's an example that I have for you. Master Sergeant Johnson led 16 hours of leadership development training for 125 personnel across 3 New York Air National Guard wings. Air National Guard is an abbreviation you can use, by the way. Okay. All right. His efforts increased leadership capabilities and experiences by 30%. All right. So what this comes down to is this. If I read this, let's break it down. He led 16 hours of leadership development training for 125 personnel across 3 wings. That's what he did. That's what he did. So what was the impact? Well, first of all, I've already got the level of impact, don't I? Because I said 3 New York Air National Guard wings. So he affected not only 1 wing, but 3 wings by giving this leadership training. So his efforts increased leadership capabilities and experiences by 30%. So basically what that's saying is those 125 personnel took and deployed that information and increased their capability by 30% with the people that they supervised back at their wings. So for the most part, anyone should be able to pick that up, look at it, and make that determination. Okay. Now, this is an interesting part of this, ladies and gentlemen, is maybe some of you are sitting there right now going, well, I wouldn't have written that I'd put this. That's okay, because guess what? The Air Force wants you to think that way. Adaptability, decision-making, right? Innovation. So if you wouldn't have written it that way, that's fine. It's no problem. Okay? So the old days of you must, okay, with the bullets, if you remember the bullets, you must have an action verb at the beginning. Always, always, always have to have an action verb. then you have to have an impact, then you have to have a result. Okay? It doesn't work that way anymore. You need to have an action and an impact. And how you get it there is your choice. And that's what's cool about it. Okay. All right. So, number one, always know the format that which you're working in. If you're going to do a 1206, pull up the 1206 and look at the 1206. If you're doing an EPB and OPB, pull up the OPB, EPB in MyEval 2.0 and take a look. Okay. How many people dealt with the original MyEval? Anybody? I'm sorry. There is a special place for the creator of MyEval, and we'll just leave it there. All right. But whoever created MyEval 2.0, God bless them, because they did a fantastic job. Because now it's very intuitive. Has anyone went into 2.0? Okay, it's very intuitive. It's all drop-down menus. So you go in, you click on the drop-down menu, and it tells you step by step through the drop-down menus what to do. It's fantastic. Much better than the original. All right, so go in, know the format. Take a look. Take a look at the 1206, take a look at whatever you're doing, take a look at the decoration, schematic, the script, whatever you're doing before you start to write. Number two, editing. Once you write your statement, read it again, walk away from it, come back, read it. Because I guarantee every time you read it over again, you're going to find something new that you want to move, tweak, or whatever the case may be. Now, let me give you a suggestion. This is something that works very well for me that I suggest to everyone. Once you get it to the point at which you say, hey, you know what, this works well, I think this is good to go, read it backwards. And Lieutenant went, what? Yeah, read it backwards. And here's the reason why. The brain, okay, for everyone in this room, we are used to reading from top to bottom, left to right. Right? Okay. Now, if you read it backwards, what it causes the brain to do, because it's something abnormal to the brain, it causes the brain to stop at every word and read every word individually. All right? And this is scientifically proven, by the way. It's just not me spouting this off. Okay? All right. So it causes the brain to stop and read every word because it's something it's not used to. So therefore, you will catch grammatical errors, you will catch typographical errors, you will catch all types of errors that you wouldn't have seen just reading it the other way. Because the brain, after a while, if you read something enough, what it does is it anticipates the next word and skips words. So that's how you miss things. You will start reading something and it will skip to the next word, and guess what? That word is misspelled or something like that and you missed it. That's why. Read it backwards. It works. I'm telling you, it works. All right. Write effectively. And what I mean by writing effectively is each one of the 4 boxes of the major performance areas that you will be writing on, only 350 characters per box. Characters. Characters. Not spaces, characters. All right? If you remember the old bullet writing, we used to play the game with spacing, right? So we had a W that was that wide, and we had an L that was that wide, and okay, I'll move this, and yeah, I can make it work. All right, no more. No more. No spacing. Characters. 350 characters per box, and that includes spaces. Spaces count as characters. So what that means, as you as the supervisor, you need to write effectively. You need to pick the brightest things that they have done, that person has done under each MVA or MPA, and write to that effect. Okay? So some things to consider. A scene, a person, a context, the equipment that they use. If you take all of these aspects and you put them together, or at least parts of them together, you will create a noteworthy narrative. You really will. All right? And you'll notice that a lot of these, I either start with the person or the scene. So they are this, or Master Sergeant or so-and-so did this. So if you combine those together, any parts of those together, you will write a noteworthy narrative because it tells a story. And that's what we are, right? We're storytellers. We're telling the story of the airmen and what they did. That's what it comes down to. You're telling a story. Okay? You also want to think about the range of the scope of the impact that they made. Again, impact to the mission. So, like I said earlier, whether an outside reader, okay, you want to make sure an outside reader, like I was saying, you want to make sure an outside reader can answer the questions of who, what, when, where, and what of the statement. I should be able to take yours, give it to him, and he should be able to determine those things based on the statement that you write if it's written correctly. Okay. All right. So we want to write compelling narratives. I don't want you to fluff it, because guess what? Fluffing is a bad thing. And that's one of the things we got into with the bullet writing, is everybody wrote fluff. And they said nothing except a bunch of acronyms and abbreviations. So we're going to stay away from the fluff. I want you to write a narrative that actually reaches out, okay? I want to write a narrative that if I give it to Tech Sergeant Campbell, it reaches out and grabs him by the lapel and says, read me. I have something special to say here. That's what I'm looking for, okay? And it should be believable and to the expectations of the reader. If you're writing a quarterly award, then you should be discussing the things that they did well in the last quarter to make it a quarterly award. Right to the expectations of the reader. All right, so things to avoid. Overly cliched superlatives. No more spearheadeds. No more outstandings. No more quarterbacked. None of those. We are done with the superlatives. Do we understand each other? Okay, so I'm going to come back here like a year from now and check your EPB or OPB and see if it's in there. Okay, now, okay, so we're staying away from the superlatives, because you know what? That's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. Because guess what? I guarantee even during the bullet writing times, if I saw a 1206 that started off with spearheaded, I went, yeah, okay, right. And I stopped right there, okay? Because it was overused. If you went on Google and looked up spearheaded, it would probably say an Air Force superlative right there as the example. Okay. All right. So we want to avoid those things because they reduce credibility and they reduce the effectiveness of a statement. Okay, stay away from them. Overly general or vague statements. Please, specific. Be specific on what the airmen did. Exactly the action of what they did. There should be no question on what the action was. All right. So let's go back to the proficiency levels for a moment. So let's say it's time to write, okay, it's time to write a OPB or EPB, and you have to determine it based on the proficiency level what you think this airman is. So how would I write to each one of these levels? Well, I'm going to give you an example of such. All right, so needs improvement. One of the things that you have to do when you look at a narrative statement or performance statement is you have to think about the person that it's being written on and everything behind it. Okay, so before we even get into the rest of this, I'm going to stop right at Master Sergeant Bailey. So as a Master Sergeant, you should be mentoring, you should be engaging, you should be allowing others to make decisions, correct? Because guess what are we doing? We're grooming that next person to come up and take our place in the future. Those are all the things that a Master Sergeant should be doing, right? Guiding, mentoring, managing. So let's take a look at this. Learned a primary care team member tested COVID positive and after being prompted, notified the flight commander at morning huddle while waiting for direction on future actions. So why is this a needs improvement? After being prompted. Had to be prompted to start it in the first place. What else? Waiting for direction. So in other words, did not take any initiative, did not adapt to the situation, did not make any decisions, just waited. That's why it's a needs improvement. Okay, next level. Again, developing. So person tested positive, notified the flight commander, well, okay, we're getting better here, all right? And with direction from her leadership, her team was able to determine a plan to resolve the issue. So the reason why this is just developing is, again, she notified the flight commander, but they had to give her direction on what to do. Okay? So again, not the best thing for a Master Sergeant. All right, so proficient. Proficient. Learning a primary care team member tested COVID positive, she responded professionally by adjusting the daily schedule and creating a plan to ensure team coverage. All right, so I'll stop at this one for a moment because a lot of people would say, really, that's just proficient? Okay, because she's a Master Sergeant and she responded professionally and she adjusted the schedule. The problem is here, as a Master Sergeant, what is she not doing? She is not engaging other people to grow them. She's not mentoring anyone. All right? So in other words, she just did it herself. And ladies and gentlemen, I fell into that trap as a senior NCO. I did. I would just say, well, you know, it's easier for me to do it myself. I'll just do it myself. Then I quickly realized that I was not helping my airmen grow to the next level. So whatever you want to call it, delegation or whatever you want to call it, okay, we have to give them the opportunity to grow. If we never give them the opportunity to grow, they're not going to grow. They're going to sit stagnant. And guess what? When it comes time for the chief to retire and someone to step into his spot, they're not ready because we're not growing them. We're not nurturing that. All right. So, highly proficient. Primary key team member tested positive and without prompting empowered a staff sergeant as team leader to decide on the necessary adjustments to ensure team coverage and mission accomplishment. Okay, we're getting there. All right, so the piece that's missing out of this one, ladies and gentlemen, is this. All right, so she empowered the staff sergeant. Great. Give them the opportunity to grow, expand. But there's nothing in here about mentoring that person to make sure that they're making the right decisions. There's no mentoring, there's no coaching, there's nothing in there to that effect, okay? Because that's basically, if I had something I handed a lieutenant, I said, okay, lieutenant, you need to do this. See ya, take care, okay? She has no clue. So there's no mentoring in this. So how do we write the exceptionally skilled one? All right, this is how we write it. Tested positive, independently acted to empower staff sergeant as team lead and mentor them creating, briefing new plans to the medical group for process improvement. So there you go. All the aspects of an exceptionally skilled master sergeant in that particular position. Make sense? Cool? All right. So here's some actual examples. Now I want to stop, before we go any further, I want to stop and talk about this. Notice, look at those three. Do they start all the same? No, everyone starts differently, doesn't it? One says Master Sergeant Snuffy, which in bullet writing was a big no-no. You never put the name and the rank of the person in a bullet because guess what? You were just wasting space, and it made sense. But now you can. But notice the second one. It starts off as affiliate school liaison. And then the third one starts off as a church deacon. Okay, wait a minute. What the heck is going on here? You know why? You can start it off any way you want to. That's the great thing about this. That's the great thing. You can write this any way you want to, ladies and gentlemen, as long as you do two things. You can get an action in there and the impact to the mission. However you want to write this is up to you. Now, your leadership above may say, well, I would like to see this or I would like to see that. And that's fine, all right, because they have that call. But I'm telling you, there's nothing in 362406 that says you must write this in this way, okay? Where, with the old bullet, it did. It said you must start off with an action verb, and you must put in an impact, and you must put in a result, all right? There's nothing in there that says I have to start this way. You can start it any way you want to. You could start it off with he. He developed a 95-item checklist, or she developed a 95-item checklist. Does not matter. I'm telling you right now. And there are still folks out there that are saying, no, you have to start it off that. No. There is nothing in 362406 that says you have to. All right, I can write it any way I want to. And you know what? The Air Force did that on purpose. Why did they do that on purpose? Because they want you to show initiative, they want you to show creativity, they want you to show decision-making process. So they gave you carte blanche when it comes to the way that you want to write these. Isn't that cool? That's cool. I like that. All right, so let's break these down a bit here. So, train 7 Air National Guard Inspector General instructors on curriculum development for the IG Advanced course, resulting in the rewrite being completed 2 months ahead of schedule. Course streamlined the inspection process by 20%. So if I break this down, Sergeant Snuffy trained 7 IG people, IG instructors, on how to write curriculum. They went back and rewrote the advanced course. They finished rewriting the advanced course and implemented it 2 months ahead of schedule. So by people taking that course, the inspector generals across the Air National Guard taking the new course was able to improve their streamline their process by 20% because they had the new information. That's how you break that down. Okay? Now, everyone should be able to read and get that some sort of the same result from reading that. Okay. All right. As the affiliate school liaison, Sergeant Snuffy, or you could say he, okay, developed a 95-item checklist to manage instructor records for the certification of 5 instructors and 10,000 and change instructor hours. So that's what he did. So he was the manager. He was the manager, or as the ASL, the affiliate school liaison. So it was his job to manage all the tracking of the instructor hours. Now, in our job, we are a CCEF affiliated school. So in other words, we teach classes that are CCEF certified. So we have to track this. We have to track instructor hours. So he made sure and accurately managed the fact that we could track those hours. So what was the impact of that? He ensured that we had continued CCEF and SAOC accreditation for the next 5 years. So they came in and inspected us and basically continued our accreditation because he had done such a good job with tracking all of this. Okay. So again, action, impact to the mission. Okay, because that directly impacted our mission. Because if they hadn't certified us, we would have had to shut down the school. Okay, so that's pretty important. Okay. All right. Now the last one is more of a 1206 writing than it is for an EPB or OPB. So it says, as a church deacon, he planned. Now, did I have to say as a church deacon? No, I didn't. I could have started off with he planned. But the reason why I did, and I wrote that one for my individual, the reason why I wrote it that way is because I wanted the audience, the people who were reading it, to understand that what he did was totally voluntary. It was totally voluntary. So as a deacon of his church, he volunteered to plan, okay, and I could have said he volunteered to plan. I could have said it that way. 3 events to raise money for a Kenya orphanage. So already I know what the impact is, even before I get to the impact. The impact, or the level of impact, is far-reaching. It's global-reaching, isn't it? So he reached across oceans and touched a country on the other side of the planet. That's pretty cool. All right. So the church secured $10,000 for food, washer, dryer, freezer, new well pump to produce clean water, running water for 50-plus children. So that was the impact. But the overall impact is the fact that he reached so far to do what he did, okay, which is really cool. All right, so here's the new form. Here's the new form. And if you've never seen it before, okay, this is it. Class, form, class. All right, so let me ask you a question here before I get any further into this. What's missing? What's not on here? The check boxes, right? The, oh my God, you are a 5, or oh my God, you suck, you're a 3. Okay, yeah. All right. But you know what? They did that on purpose. They did that on purpose, ladies and gentlemen, because guess what? Here was the problem with the old system. If you went all the way over to the right, next, right? Agreed? If you went all the way over to the right, you were next in line. You were next on the pile. The thing is, we never give the reader the chance to read the report because we had check boxes in there that basically told them what to think. So the Air Force decided we're going to get rid of the check boxes. So guess what that means, ladies and gentlemen? That means that people actually have to read the report to figure out what the proficiency level of those airmen are. Holy cow. Cats and dogs living together in harmony. My goodness. Okay. So with that being said, it breaks down into 3 parts. The rater assessment, the mandatory comments module, and we're going to break each one of these down individually, and the HLR assessment. All right. So let's break these down. First of all, the rater's assessment. So you are going to rate you are going to rate on the 4 major performance areas using the 10 ALQs. So you have 350 characters per box to know that. Okay. So down at the lower end of that is all of the rater's information, name, rank, so on and so forth. All right. The next one is what's called the mandatory comments module. 99% of the people in the Air Force will never deal with this box, okay? Because what it's for is if you supervise someone who has military, who is the military privatized housing oversight person or a voting officer, okay? This box, this area has to be filled out. If you do not, it will be grayed out and you can't get to it. So like I said, 99% of the people don't ever supervise someone like that, so it will be grayed out. But if it is, I mean, if you do, somewhere in the future, lieutenants, you may be a voting officer or whatever, okay? So that area has to be filled out. So it's mandatory that you put in a statement of how they did. It's mandatory that that section is filled out by the rater. Okay. So the next one is the higher level reviewer assessment. The higher level reviewer assessment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where the rater, okay, writes the report and it goes to the HLR. Now, remember the old days with the EPRs and the OPRs where it went from the rater to the rater's rater to the senior rater to the endorsing official and blah, 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 blah? Doesn't do that anymore. It goes from the rater to the HLR. That is the official line of command. Now, if your chief or your deputy or what, before you even get to the report, you're going to hit a drop-down menu that's going to say feedback. And that drop-down menu is going to open this window right here. This window is your last opportunity to give constructive feedback to that airman before you write the report. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to grade all of these areas in the 10 ALQs by proficiency level. You're going to click on those boxes. You're going to have a discussion with the airmen, okay, of where their final proficiency levels are going to be. Because guess what? Guess what? Doesn't it make sense to actually tell them how they're going to be rated? Shouldn't be a surprise, right? Has anyone ever been surprised over your EPR or OPR? I have. Like, really? You're going to have one final discussion with that airman before you write the report. And it's going to be recorded right here in this proficiency, right on MyEval 2.0. You will click the correct boxes of how you want to rate them and save it, and it will save it. Now, here's the interesting part of this. HLR can't see it and no one else can see it. Okay. All right, so if you have any questions, and I put stratification to HLR, but any questions about this, go to your CSS. Go to your personnel list at CSS, because we've been doing this about 2 years now, so they're pretty knowledgeable about the background of how to guarantee. I asked that question at the beginning, how many people know about the ALQs? If you don't know, your people don't know either. They need to know what the ALQs are. They do. Because they're being rated using them. They need to know what they are. All right? So, again, what the proficiency levels are, what the ALQs are, how they fit into that.
Some of the major graded areas, there were three ALQs there. Said that we're probably only going to be able to get 2 statements in. That we have to try to double up
Okay, so
multiple ALQs.
okay, that's not the purpose of it. What you do is you select the ALQs that highlight what they did in that particular thing. So in other words, if you're writing one on adapted, they adapted to the situation. Use the ALQ for adaptability, all right? Because that was my first question when I started writing. He's like, how the heck do I get all 10 ALQs into a statement? Well, you don't. You don't. You select the ones that you're writing toward and use that to substantiate why you're writing that, okay, based on that ALQ. Okay, does that answer your question?
It does.
Yes, sir. All right. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I don't know if you hit on it or not. There's
No, there is not a minimum.
Okay.
There is not a minimum.
I'll
It's,
be told
it's,
there is 150 is the minimum.
no, not as far as I know. Now, there may be something that's new that's come out that I haven't heard, but yeah, I didn't hear that there was a minimum. That may be something that your local is saying that it needs to be at least 150 characters to be effective. It may be that, but for the form itself, no. Because you could type simply, this section not used in there, and it would work. Yeah, so it's not the form. It's not the form. That may be a policy that your local folks is saying. Yes, ma'am.
Where do we find the infographic that lists all of the ALQs and which area they fall under? I took a picture of it.
Okay, so you're talking about that one I had up there? All right, so I am going to give Senior Cotton this slide set and allow her to go ahead and disperse it out to all of you, so you will have the slides that I have provided. I'm also going to give her what we call the management writing guide. So it covers a lot of the things I talked about here, but not only that, it talks about also other things. It talks about how to be a management and how to write effectively, like emails and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to give that to her to disperse out to you also. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Does the tongue and quill still apply? Like, was that updated for this?
No, it has not been updated yet. They're telling us that it's going to be updated this year, but as of this time, it has still not been updated, okay? They made a feeble attempt last year to update it, but it didn't work very well, okay? All right, so thank you very much for having me. I love Delaware, I do. I think it's a beautiful area. I like coming up here and seeing Senior Cotton. We have this relationship once every year or so. She says, hey, can you come back and teach? And I'm like, sure, I'll come back and teach. All right. So I really enjoy coming up here, and I really enjoy teaching this particular subject because I'm passionate about it because I think it's so important. I do. It's so very important because we're not only talking about how we're going to write, we're talking about the change in the idea behind leadership. And that's pretty important. And it starts with all of you in this